This is a demo that shows how to run MongoDB in Linux containers. Using containers, we are going to set up a MongoDB database environment, and then uh, I'm going to add shards to an existing database over multiple containers to try and demonstrate horizontal scaling. As you can see, I have three containers already running. Each of them has a unique IP address. They're all RHEL 7 containers. So I'm going to start by creating my config database on container number 1. And I'm going to start up a database on the container, and then I'm going to go over to another container where I'm going to run the Mongo S service, which is the arbitrator for the sharding. And I will create my environment. I will add the first database as into the shard, and I will enable sharding in my database. So having done all of this, I will start the load operation into the database. We are going to load 10 million rows, so while the load takes place, I'm just going to pause the video, and after the 10 million rows have been loaded, I will resume the video and kick off a workload, and we will track the progress of the scaling of the workload by looking at the total ops per second as we keep adding more shards to the environment. So I'm going to pause this right now. It's about 200,000 operations, and we'll pick up after the 2 million rows have been loaded fully into the database. So we've loaded 10 million rows into our database. Now I'm going to go off and run a workload against the database. So this is the IP address of our controls server. So I'm going to put 42 over here, and I'll kick off the update workload. This goes ahead and updates 1 million rows out of the 10 million. And as soon as the workload is complete, I'm going to pause the video recording again, and then as soon as the workload is complete, we'll go resume the video and take a look at how many ops per second we are able to do with one shard in the database, and then we'll expand the database by adding one more shard. So as we pick up the video at this point where we have completed the 5 million transaction, I'm going to cat out the file, and we'll take a look at the ops per second for 5 million transactions, and I'm going to record this before we add the second shard. So having recorded that, I'm going to go back to my control server and log into my Mongo instance and add the second shard, which is, I have to start the database first on this host, on this container. So I'm going to start up the database, and I'm going to add the IP over here .30 to the shard. And as you can see, as soon as I added the container to the shard, it has already started distributing. So we can see the files growing now. So the database gets distributed and spread out over both shards. Once the distribution is complete, I'm going to rerun the workload, and then we'll pick up and take a look at the throughput ops per second for that. So I'm going to pause this video again and then resume once the distribution is completed, and the workload also is done with 5 million transactions. The sharding distribution is just completed, so I'm going to kick off the workload again. It is again going to run to the service node, which is 10.42. And again, this is 5 million transactions doing updates to the database, but now instead of running to one database in one container, it is distributed across 2 containers. And at the end of the run, we will take a look at the ops per second and see if horizontal scaling and adding more shards helps performance. I'm going to pause recording the video right now and then resume it as soon as the transactions are done. So the 5 million transactions have just completed. We'll take a look at the average transaction rate by looking at the output file, and from 20,000 ops per second we have gone to 25,000 ops per second average. So that's a nice improvement in performance. I've already fired up the database on my third container. I'm going to add it into my shard. I'll pick the IP address 37 and add it into my shard, and let's see. Yep, so the performance of the database has started rebalancing again, so we will let it finish the rebalancing like we did with the second shard, and then we'll kick off the workload one more time. So as you can see with containers, it's while this operation is going on, I want to just talk about the containers, and you can see that they are very once you set up an environment with an image, it's very easy to fire up a container, and then in this case with MongoDB, I can just start off one more instance of MongoDB and add it into my shard and help the horizontal scaling of my workload. So if these right now these containers are all running on a single host, but if we could envision a scenario where we have containers running on different hosts, it would reduce the deployment time considerably, because you will be able to copy an image and start up a container almost instantly, and it's a nice mechanism in which you could set up a horizontal scaling environment. So after adding the third shard and doing the rebalancing, I reran 5,000 transactions, and let's take a look at the output. And as we can see here, we got a nice improvement in performance. We got 31,400 ops per second. So that was a demonstration of how to use containers, how to run MongoDB in containers, and then just scale it horizontally by creating shards in additional containers as required by the workload. Thank you for watching this demo.